the issue is that no one in the country, outside of a handful of people who've been paying attention, understand where we're at and the severity of the situation. Which is that, like, it's not like an abstract thing, this threat to our democracy. It's not an abstract threat. It's not an abstract concept that our democracy is broken. Our democracy is only as real as our Constitution is, as we are willing to make real the promise and the covenant we have with this document called the Constitution. And today, Republicans have unambiguously declared that they are not going to respect constitutional order. That's kind of where we're at. It started earlier today. And as far as I can tell, one of the earliest people to talk about this is one Chad Pergram over on Twitter. We'll just start here. Johnson says he agrees with Vice President Vance about the executive branch having power over spending. Talked to Elon Musk yesterday. Now, for those of you who haven't been keeping abreast of the situation, J.D. Vance has basically been arguing that the president can ignore both Congress and the courts when it comes to spending. And the third most powerful person in government just agreed with him this morning. Mike Johnson is third in line for the presidency, okay? He's been saying that for a while. No, in fact, he has not. This quote right here is from May of last year from Mike Johnson. I do think there has to be accountability. Congress has the power of the purse, of course, and we have oversight responsibility, and we have been vigorously using both of those powers. No, this is not new. J.D. Vance has absolutely been in the pocket of the, billionaire crypto philosophers, the fascist fucks that have been puppeteering his entire career. Absolutely. That's not new. What is new is the complete and utter capitulation we are currently witnessing within our system. That is what is new. And it's something that we have to reckon with. And remember how yesterday we talked about how really there are only 3 bulwarks left between, realistically, only 1 bulwark left between us and a dictatorship. And I think Elizabeth Warren actually said it pretty well, if I can pull that up here, the other day. Where is this? Come on. Where's the media clip that I'm looking for? God damn it. She just went on a talk show yesterday. Oh, God. I knew I was going to regret not grabbing that for later. Oh, here it is. From MSNBC.
What do you make of this big, I think, constitutionally existential question about whether or not court rulings are going to be treated as optional by these guys? Their brazenness at breaking the law, whether it's with the CFPB or USAID or any of these other things they're doing, seems to me born of a kind of confidence that can only come from their expectation that the courts don't mean much at the end of the day, and that illegality is not necessarily a reason to avoid doing something that they really want to do.
You're right. We've got our toes right on the edge of a constitutional crisis here. But here's the thing. It may be the case that Donald Trump is so full of confidence that he thinks he can wave his wand and whatever he wants to happen will happen. And in many cases, he will be right. For example, the Republicans in the Senate just go ahead and confirm people for jobs that they know they are not qualified for. So they will kowtow to him. But I don't think that's going to happen with the courts.
And the issue here is that Elizabeth Warren is putting a lot, every single person in Washington has been putting a lot of emphasis on the courts, folks. And the issue here is that, FEMA officials ignore judge's latest order, demands freeze on grant funding. And part of the buried lead in this story is that there were people who tried, within FEMA, who tried to comply with the order. They tried to comply with the legal order given by the federal judge with the, to let the funds flow. They were fired. So, again, a lot of the reporting on this is nebulous here, but a senior official at the Federal Emergency Management Agency instructed subordinates to freeze funding for a wide array of grant programs Monday, just hours after a federal judge ordered the Trump administration for a second time to stop such pauses. In an email with the subject line "Urgent Holds on Awards," Stacey Street, the director of the agency's Office of Grant Administration, told her team to freeze funding for grant programs going back several years, including those focused on emergency preparedness, homeland security, firefighting, protecting churches from terrorism, and tribal security. For all awards, FY23 and prior, put financial holds on all of your awards, all open awards, all years 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, using the shorthand FY for fiscal year. NBC News obtained screenshots of the email from a recipient who requested anonymity out of fear of reprisal, which, yeah. So what we have here is, I don't mean this as hyperbole, there should be an immediate warrant out for, like, the arrest of Stacey Street. We're not getting that. All of the people in a position of authority to do this are in the pocket of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So, what kind of remains to be seen at this point is just, are the courts going, how the courts respond. That's kind of where we're at. Okay? Because as we went over yesterday, if Donald Trump does not adhere to these orders, which again, yesterday we admitted was very unlikely, we now have to watch what the courts do. We have to see what happens. But basically, this is the final trigger. Like, this was the trigger on, like, whether or not all the bad shit we've been talking about happening starts to happen. And it's been pulled. There's not really getting around this now. Like, the thing that had to happen today was Donald Trump back down. Well, that's an excellent question, Mr. Malachite. Who is there to enforce what the courts decide? Genuinely no idea. At this point, like, do the Capitol Police arrest these folks? Do U.S. Marshals go in? Does the military come in? We're kind of in the unprecedented territory. And people aren't understanding yet, but unless these people are immediately and summarily arrested, unless there is a reestablishment of rule of law as a concept, democracy's done. Like, you guys get that, right? Like, this is effectively the last day of democracy in America. And yeah, it seemed like something worth streaming about, I suppose. Additionally, we have another federal judge order today that gives an explicit timeline here. A federal judge orders HHS, CDC, and FDA to restore by no later than 11:59 p.m. today their websites and datasets to pre-January 30th status. And we know that the court's order here isn't going to be complied with. So we're kind of left wondering what happens now. Neither side has stood down. What happens? Who's going to stop them? Presumably, who knows? Genuinely no idea. Genuinely no idea. Is it the U.S. Marshals? Is it the Capitol Police? Is it the military? I don't know. God, Jess, maybe another time. I appreciate you, but I cannot get really past today as a concept. Yeah, National Guard. I don't know, Derek IT Pro. A lot of people just it's not clicking for folks yet. And I can tell for a lot of you in chat, it's not clicking for you guys either, folks. This is the fucking Rubicon. This is the moment we are no longer capable with our system of actually moderating what comes next. This is the executive office of the United States of America assuming dictatorial power. This is the moment we slide from the great American experiment into a failed state. Am I safe in California? I mean, presumably, if you are in a blue state with sufficient legal protections, with people who are actually going to uphold those protections, you are in a good position to weather this coming storm, regardless of what happens. That's great, Jess. I'm not a large enough show to actually get these people onto my show. I'm not large enough to do that. I wish I was, because maybe if I was large enough, I could have helped try and prevent the worst fucking state that we are in right now. I would love to be large enough to get those guests on my show, but I'm not. I'm just a small little birthday girl. Is Pennsylvania considered a blue state? No. Is there anything we can do anymore? You can get involved in your local and state level politics. This is exactly the reason. This day is exactly the reason for the last year to 2 years I've been banging on the drum for you guys to get involved with your local and state level politics. This is why, okay? Bang, bang, bang. Get involved in your local and state level politics, because that is the only thing that will keep you safe if the federal government is weaponized against you. And in doing so, you will build community, people will know you, and you will be known, and that is a good defense for what could be coming soon. A lot of folks just aren't getting it. Earlier Monday, U.S. District Judge John J. McConnell said that the Trump administration continued to implement a White House memo, which had since been rescinded, blocking federal grant recipients programs. Despite his directive restraining the implementation of that order, public servants across federal agencies now find themselves caught between President Donald Trump's executive orders and federal judges who have blocked them, at least temporarily, until the courts can more fully determine whether the president has exceeded his legal authority, which at the moment he currently is. Yeah, axolotls with cream. A lot of people are. A lot of people just they look around. They're like, well, the people in my little neck of the woods, they're Gucci. They like me. I'll be fine. They don't get it, you know. And this is kind of the lead that got buried in this story, exclusive for NBC. Here, these officials are at the ground level of a potential constitutional crisis. And to be very clear with all of you, we are not in a potential constitutional crisis. We have been in a constitutional crisis, even though most of the press doesn't want to admit it. We have been in a constitutional crisis for over a week now. It has been the existential constitutional crisis of our lifetimes. There has never been anything remotely comparable that any single one of you, I don't care how old you are, has actually lived through. Okay? There's nothing comparable. The closest thing that is comparable to the kind of constitutional crisis we are currently in is the civil fucking war. You know, I didn't name that stream I did a few days ago that title to be like silly. That was real. I meant that shit, and people still don't get it. People still don't get it. Potential constitutional crisis. Open your goddamn eyes. Get your head out of your ass. In which Trump is claiming expansive powers that test traditional limits on the president's authority and could circumscribe the roles of Congress and the courts. Which, again, because the media is afraid of using very plain language here, that is NBC News saying, with a mouthful of extra $5 words here, that Donald Trump would assume the role of a dictator. That's what this means. Four FEMA officials were fired Tuesday. Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson for Homeland Security, Secretary Kristi Noem, declined to name the four officials. When asked why they were let go, McLaughlin referred to New York grants. Quote, effective immediately, FEMA is terminating the employment of four individuals for circumventing leadership to unilaterally make egregious payments for luxury New York City hotels for migrants. Under President Trump and Secretary Noem's leadership, DHS will not sit idly and allow deep state activists to undermine the will and safety of the American people. So to clarify with you guys exactly what happened today, four goddamn heroes inside of the federal systems, four unnamed bureaucratic heroes, put their lives and their livelihoods on the line in order to ensure that undocumented migrants being housed in New York City could continue to have a roof over their heads. That is where we are at. And in return for their service, they have lost their jobs, and they have been labeled as deep state activists, effectively, in the language of the Trump administration, traitors. Fulmar Music, I appreciate you, but also don't super chat shit like that. It does not have anything to do with what we're talking about. So that's kind of where we're at, folks. The thing that our progressive leadership, you know, for whatever that amounts to, was touting less than 24 hours ago as a final roadblock for Donald Trump being a dictator, is not blocking anymore, unless it actually proves to have teeth. And I don't want to hold my breath for that. I don't think any of us have the lung capacity to hold our breaths for that. I'm going to the pharmacy before they take my VA benefits. Honestly, Big Bad Aardwolf, a very good idea. Folks should be, like, again, folks should be stockpiling, because you're going to need to hunker down for a while, folks. Things are going to be really bad. Didn't you see this coming, though? You know, there's a big difference between seeing something coming and then suddenly that bad thing happening, right? Like, there's a big difference between looking and seeing, like, a bus barreling towards you and, like, having an awareness that it's going to hit you, having an awareness it's going to break every bone in your body, having an awareness that it's going to implode multiple organs and, like, pierce through various necessary tissues. There's a big difference between seeing the bus coming and actually being hit by the bus. What if I can't, then I'm unable to? Then make real good friends with folks in your community, whether they're online or in real life. Preferably in real life, but if all you got is online, then make better friends online. Okay? Because for a lot of us folks, it is it's survive time. All right? For, like, if you're wondering, like, what do I do now? Well, for a lot of us, it's time to shift into survival mode. It's time to shift into, what can I do? What can my community do? How can we be safe? That's what we do. Yeah, you like, again, the hurricane analogy from the other day is very apt. You brace for impact. You batten down the hatches. You make every move you can, regardless of what it is, to make sure you and yours are safe and the folks around you that you love and cherish are safe as well. That's what you do. Are we going to have to worry about Gestapo going neighborhood to neighborhood? That's literally already happening. You realize that, right? That's what ICE does. They've already been arresting U.S. citizens. We already have that. It's not every man for themselves, Eddie Spencer. If you do go into this with that mentality, you're not going to last very long. What we have is one another. What we have is the power of union. What we have is the power of community. But we need to make sure that we actually hold the line. Okay? It is not time to give up and to roll over. There's a difference between battening down the hatches and preparing for the worst and just giving up. Those are two very different things. I hope you all understand that, right? Because what I'm advocating for is not by any means giving up. What I'm advocating for is that you batten down the hatches, you do the best you can for yourself, for your loved ones, for the people you cherish, because there are bad times a-coming. Okay? Bad times are coming. But one of the silver linings of bad times is that it mobilizes people. Because a lot of folks don't understand, right? They just don't get it. They don't understand what's happening. And even if they have some inkling, most people at this point have no idea how bad it is. Okay? Yeah, Electra, most people don't even believe you when you try and convey what's going on. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is that we batten down the hatches, we make sure we are as safe as we can make ourselves, our loved ones are as safe as we can make them, that we have, you know, the things that we need to get through the day. And then we look around us at what we can do to help others. Right? Don't panic, but prepare. Don't panic, but prepare. Okay? And as we're looking at this, understand that if we have indeed entered like an authoritarian time, you need to start looking at unknown stuff that enters your social circle and orbit with a little bit of skepticism. Okay? If you see a new online tool that you've never heard of before, you need to take on the due diligence of looking into that. If you see something that you're like, oh man, this seems useful, but you have no idea where it came from, you need to find out where it came from before you start sharing it with other people. Okay? You need to enter into this with the idea that there are bad people, real life bad people, that exist in our world and wish you and yours harm. Okay? So understand, we have a community that we have built up over the last several months, okay? We have resources at our disposal. We have each other in this online community we have built. We have relatively vetted folks who can help transport you to safer states. We have a wide range of talent in a very diverse set of fields and skills that you can call upon to help you vet things, to help you make things, to help you repair things, to help you get the things you need and folks you care about what they need to live. That was the entire purpose of this organizing effort in our online space. In our little corner of the world. I'm not a big streamer, but that was the entire point. Okay? Was to help you guys connect with each other in ways that might unfortunately become relevant. And we are now in that incredibly relevant time. I'm sorry to say. Indivisible, yes. Also, this is not an excuse to, like, stop organizing. Because, folks, we need to organize. You know, if the worst case scenarios are to be prevented, we need to organize en masse in a way we haven't in generations. What we need is for people to turn out. What we need is for people to understand that this is a big deal. You know, if you're not someone who can turn out for protests for whatever reason, you need to be diligently and doing your best, like creating explainers, make propaganda that explains the situation we're in. Okay? Make little pamphlets you can drop at your corner stores. Make like memes that you can share online. You got to be doing shit. Every single one of you has to be doing something. And I don't care. Frankly, I don't give a shit. If you're like, oh, but you know, I'm just such a sad little bean. I can't do it. No, you can. Get creative. Figure it out. Figure out how you can contribute. Like your life depends on it, because it may. Yeah, also, Super Jet Guy, I don't have all the answers. I don't know the intricacies of your situation. I don't know your economic situation. I don't know your job situation. I don't know I can't like draw you a plan of how to get to a safer state. But that would be a great thing to do. But also maybe look around and say to yourself, is that something that you need in order to be safe on an existential level? Because there are going to be people who can continue to exist just fine in deeply red states. There are going to be people who can continue to exist just fine. Life will, in fact, continue happening. Throw out more ideas to help, please. I like what you just suggested. Look, we have an entire Discord for people to like throw out ideas and to spitball with each other. I'm not going to do that live on stream right now, okay? But we have dedicated protest areas. We have dedicated organizing areas in the Discord. And that is a perfect place to discuss some of those things. Okay? I cannot, due to the limitations of being one human being, I cannot address all of your individual concerns or worries or come up with plans individualized to each of you. I fucking wish I could. I wish I was capable in that way. But I don't have that skill set, and I don't have that many hands, you know? So you guys are going to have to work with each other to figure that out. I have built, you know, along with this wonderful community of moderators, a community where you guys have the tools to either request more organizing space in the Discord from moderators, or there are already spaces for you guys to brainstorm and discuss these ideas on the Discord. And honestly, it will be even more effective because you're discussing it with not just me, but with all kinds of other people. Okay? If you are looking for people to protest with, Indivisible has done an incredible job putting together local, state, and national level protests. And we need to continue to mobilize more and more. Yeah. We're in some deep shit. Like, I don't know what will happen if 24 hours go by and nothing like the courts don't respond with some serious teeth, and I don't know that they're going to do that. One thing I wanted to do here was to well, Bernie Sanders went live in the Senate about 30 minutes ago, and I figured we'd listen to what Bernie Sanders had to say. Because he's probably one of the clearest-eyed politicians on this particular moment, and he does not mince words. I listened to a couple minutes of it. It's good stuff. And I think it's necessary for where we're at this particular moment in time.
They will remember whether we stood with them. They will remember whether we stood with President Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, who in 1863, looking out over a battlefield where thousands of people had died, thousands of soldiers died in the fight against slavery. And
this actually cut off like the beginning of his speech. Let me grab that real quick. Sophie Bliss, thank you for the gifted membership. I appreciate it. I do appreciate that.
In a quorum call here?
We are not.
Okay. President, we
Jesus.
are living in a extremely dangerous time. And future generations will look back at this moment, what we do right now, and remember whether we had the courage to defend our democracy against the growing threats of oligarchy and authoritarianism.
He's not just talking to the members of this body. He's talking to all of us, chat.
They will remember whether we stood with President Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, who in 1863, looking out over a battlefield where thousands of people had died, thousands of soldiers died in the fight against slavery, and he stated that, quote, "This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Do we stand with Lincoln's vision of America, or do we sit idly by and allow this country to move into a new vision? And that is a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, for the billionaire class. But it is not just oligarchy that we should be concerned about. Not just the reality that today 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million. 3 people, more wealth than the bottom 170 million Americans. It is not just that the gap between the very, very rich and everyone else is growing wider, and it is not just that we have more income and wealth inequality today than we have ever had. On top of all of that, the reality is that today we are moving rapidly under President Trump toward authoritarianism. More and more power resting in fewer and fewer hands. Mr. President, as we speak right now, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man on the planet, is attempting to dismantle major agencies of the federal government which are designed to protect the needs of working families and the disadvantaged. These agencies were created by the U.S. Congress, and it is Congress's responsibility to maintain them, to reform them, or to end them. It is not Mr. Musk's responsibility. What Mr. Musk is doing is patently illegal and unconstitutional and must be ended. Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, President Trump attempted to suspend all federal grants and loans, an outrageous and clearly unconstitutional act. And as I hope every 6th grader, every kid in the 6th grade in this country knows, under the Constitution and our form of government, the President can recommend legislation, he can support legislation, he can veto legislation, but he does not have the power to unilaterally terminate funding passed by the Congress. It is Congress, the House and the Senate, who control the purse strings. But in this move toward authoritarianism, it is not just the Congress that is being attacked. It is our judiciary. This weekend, the Vice President of the United States, a graduate of Yale Law School, who clerked for a Supreme Court justice, said that, and I quote, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power," end quote. Really? I thought that one of the major functions of the federal courts is to interpret our Constitution and, when appropriate, serve as a check on the unconstitutional power of the executive.
I have to say, folks, that I'm grateful for a lot of things, but one of the things I'm most grateful for at this particularly frightening moment in American history is that we still have a coherent and powerful speaker and honestly, like, political figure in the form of Bernie Sanders. I'm really grateful for that. Because right now, other members of Congress are not living up to the current times and what are demanded of them. We need we need every single member of Congress, every single Democrat that has been elected into office to stand up and make speeches like this. You know, we need every single one to condemn what is happening here. We need every single one to delay whatever ghoulish actions Republicans want to do after they're done talking. And it's good that we are not in this fight alone.
That's not just what I
What are the odds we see foreign intervention? 0.
believe. That is what I suspect every
No one's coming to
legal
fucking save
scholar
us.
and lawyer in America understands to be the case. Further, Mr. Musk, meanwhile, has proposed, and I quote, that the worst 1% of appointed judges be fired every year, end quote. And he demanded the impeachment of judges that have blocked him from accessing sensitive Treasury Department files. No doubt, under Mr. Musk's rule, it will be him and his billionaire friends who determine who the worst judges are. And no, Mr. Musk, I must tell you, you don't impeach judges who rule against you here in the United States. You may or may not know this.
And just to be clear, as we continue to cover this, more and more elements of Trump world are coalescing in this fascist argument that the president has the ability to supersede not just Congress, but also the court systems, that the entire basis of our democracy of like 3 co-equal branches of government is all a lie. You learned it wrong, you fools, you rubes. You were just taught wrong as a joke, apparently. You know?
Taxpayer dollars to look at separation of powers. It's a really novel idea, but our founding fathers created a document, the Constitution. There's a separation of powers for a reason. The executive branch is the ultimate authority on federal issues. And
no, it's not.
We have rogue judges who are trying to stop members like Doge team, Besant, from doing their job. And that's to protect taxpayer dollars, to look at what we're doing with spending, and to run the federal government under President Trump.
Yeah, so again, these people are traitors to the Republic, and in any functional system would be summarily arrested for what they are doing. Who the hell is that woman? That is Alina Habba, one of Donald Trump's top lawyers. I need to know, is she the personal lawyer to the president, or is she, yes, she is currently serving as counselor to the president. So she's Donald Trump's lawyer. Wasn't she disbarred? Nope. We are seeing the downfall of the Republic, folks. That is what is currently happening, because, frankly, not enough people in America realize it's happening. It's dying a quiet death, apparently.
Mr. Musk, but under the U.S. Constitution, we have a separation of powers, brilliantly crafted by the founding fathers of this country in the 1770s, and it has worked pretty well throughout our country's history. We have an executive branch, we have a legislative branch, and we have a judiciary. Mr. President, what we are seeing now is not just an organized attack on the power of the Congress and the responsibility of the judiciary. Mr. Trump and his friends are not just trying to undermine two of the three pillars of our constitutional government, Congress and the courts, they are also going after the media in a way that we have never seen in the modern history.
Yeah, Gecko Mancer, I don't fucking care for people who are like, oh, well, America's actually been in slow decline since, 1912. Like, okay. Yeah, I understand the moment in history. I don't think that particularly helps us at this juncture. Like, treating it as if it's an inevitable rolling of the time as opposed to something that we could have avoided at any given point through innumerable different decisions and through innumerable different ways of organizing. We need to recognize what this is, and you can, like, at the end of the day say this is an inevitable result of the rot of the system or whatever, but ultimately at the end of the day, we opted to stand in front of a speeding bus. And now we are about to reap those consequences.
History of this country. Trust me that every member of Congress will tell you that the people working in the media and media organizations are not perfect. We have all had our experiences with the media. Media, like everything else, makes mistakes every day. But I do hope that every member of Congress understands that you cannot have a functioning democracy. You cannot have a free flow of information. You cannot have the pursuit of truth without an independent press. A press not intimidated by presidents of the United States, but a president who writes it and sees it the way they understand it to be. And in that regard,
I agree, Sophie Bliss. I hope that we're all safe for the next 4 years, but I can guarantee you some of us are not going to make it. Please pay attention to me. What happened this time? The fucking downfall of the Republic. Do I need to underline it for you? It's the president openly and along with all of his allies ignoring any of the checks and balances of the court. Which leaves us with two additional balances left. And that is the balance of the market. And who the fuck gives a shit about the market when they have the world's billionaires in their pocket? And the people. And most people in this goddamn godforsaken country do not understand what is happening. So did that clear it up for you? Did that clear it up, folks? This is not like we'll just go back. We'll go back to normal tomorrow. There is not going back to what happened yesterday. There is no going back to yesterday. There's no going back. We have crossed the Rubicon. We are in fucking new territory where the global hegemon is a dictatorship. That's where we're at. Okay? The global superpower with the largest, most powerful military on Earth is now a superpower, or is now a dictatorship. I know it's bad, but please stop yelling at us. I can't. I'm very angry. I'm very upset. We're doing this. I'm doing this stream because you guys need to know this information. We need to enter into this with the clearest-eyed vision of what's happening right now. And what's happening right now is real bad shit. So what I'm upset about is people being like, well, pay attention to me specifically, when it's like, we got a lot of things we need to talk about. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have energy. I don't have it in me to explain to each person what is at stake here, because if I did, I would do it, you know? Because too many people in this country don't get it. Too many people don't get it, guys. If every single one of you goes out and explains this to every single person you know, not enough people are gonna get it. And like, I'm so like far beyond and far away from being okay right now. And I know it's not your fault, Sassy Sasserai. You just want to understand what the fuck is happening. I get it. But the frustrating thing is we're in the cool zone. Did something new happen that specifically is upsetting, or just a general building of everything? Fundamentally broken. The new thing that happened is that immediately after, on Monday, a judge ordering that the federal freeze should end, a director or a high-level federal appointee within FEMA froze the funds. Again. Okay? So what happened was a judge said, for the second time, hey, do not ignore this order. You need to unfreeze the funds. And then a department of the federal government that previously froze the funds, unfroze them, but then froze them again. And today, four employees of the federal government went and they did their duty to this country, put their jobs on the line, put their lives on the line to unfreeze funding for migrant families sheltering in New York City. They put their goddamn lives and careers on the line to ensure that people remained housed. People who needed help got the help that they got. And in return, they were fired this morning. Okay? So what is happening is a direct, calculated, and ongoing refusal of the Trump administration and the federal government to actually comply with court orders, with federal judge orders. These are not optional things, guys. When a federal judge orders you to stop, you fucking stop. Okay? I thought I made that clear, Lady Raincloud. Yeah, they fired those people. They put their jobs and their lives on the line, and their careers were torched. So, where we're at right now is that line, that Rubicon, that stream that separates when our democracy is functioning and when our democracy has ceased to function and the Constitution ceases to mean anything. They crossed that line. We're now into the Constitution has been ripped up and torn to shreds. The courts no longer matter territory. That's the situation we're in. Okay? The courts are no longer holding. They are not a check. You have the president's lawyer going on television today and saying that, oh, the president is the, head of all things related to federal issues. So, he can do what he wants, essentially. You have Speaker of the House Mike Johnson meeting with Elon Musk late yesterday and agreeing that the president just has the right to, do with funds as he will. That's where we're at, folks. That's where we're at. The Rubicon has been crossed. And I need you all to understand that in that crossing, there is danger to you, specifically each one of you watching. You need to treat it as if now we are in hostile territory, as if the things you are saying and the things you are doing are being observed by someone who means you and your family ill. You need to understand that the seriousness of the times we live in are such that you gotta be careful with the shit you say. You gotta be careful as hell. No more of this cute little like Fed posting shit, because again, these people are not bound by law anymore. These people are building concentration camps in Guantanamo Bay. These people are not above just ripping up the law and doing whatever the hell they want to you. The checks and balances are gone. Okay? Werix says, attorney here, this is as serious as Riverboat Jack says, the courts are the source of most rights any of us enjoy. Yeah. Just yesterday, Elizabeth Warren was talking about how the last defense we have are the courts. And the courts aren't applying anymore to what they're doing. Okay? So you got to be careful with what you say online. We all got to be careful. When I say we got to hunker down, that includes hunkering down to a degree with our language. Even though a judge blocked the use of Guantanamo Bay, it's still being used. Yep. So where we're at right now is in a serious and profound constitutional crisis that has worsened. That's where we're at. We are not living in the worst outcome, Geckomancer. That still remains to be seen. We are in, however, one of the really bad ones. We are in one of the really bad ones. And I will just say that, like, we gotta hunker down. We gotta look after ourselves, our loved ones, our neighbors, our communities. And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, a lot of folks are asking what happens from here. I don't know. I don't know. The courts are kind of faced with a conundrum right now because, as we saw the other day, essentially the options on the table for ignoring the court order related to the freezing of funds are essentially fining the agencies responsible for not, going along with a court order, which I don't understand why you would ever fine an organization for the crime of not funding things. That just doesn't make sense. No one's going to give a shit about that. The other option is to imprison agency heads who are not complying with the orders. And so kind of what we're looking at here is how do the courts respond? And I guess one could say they could like conserve, their power on paper by issuing meaningless fines. That is one option available to them. They could order arrests. And we don't know what happens when they do that. Do the U.S. Marshals go perform the arrests? Do the Capitol Police go perform the arrests? Does the military go do that? Which side are you on? Who arrests these people in power? Yeah, and exactly, Trans Girl Jade. The very fact that people don't know what the hell the order of operations are is what makes this a particularly dangerous time. This is why one of you need to, like, understand, like, you guys need to understand, like, there's a real danger here. One of the things I said on social media today is that whatever whether you're aware of it or not, the crossing of this opens up the door to an unimaginable amount of violence. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, like, that is a fact. Whether it's violence being done by the state against citizens or non-citizens, whether it is by, militia groups or lone actors, or whether it's a fracturing of the military. So that's interesting. Now, some people have been saying, like, this is a new fascism similar to McCarthyism, but, like, I don't think it's not even McCarthyism. We're off the map. We're ripping up the Constitution and trying to drape ourselves in the refuse. Like, that's kind of where we're at. So that's, yeah. Think of what happened in South Korea where the president's security forces stopped his arrest. Yep, similar. I think South Korea is a very good parallel. However, I'm worried that perhaps this fascist infiltration is a lot more in-depth than any of us know yet. I'm really scared. Understand that it is okay to be scared. I'm really scared too. One of the best antidotes for being scared is to organize with folks. Is to talk with others, to come up with your plan to be safe, to keep yourself safe. Okay? It could be, I know some people are saying, like, if you arrest, I'm just going to choose Emperor Zeno's comment here. If you arrest, say, Elon Musk and Trump pardons him, you follow him around immediately, arrest him again when he starts mucking around with the Treasury, whatever. And it could be that what we see happen is an emergency escalation to the, like, Supreme Court of the United States. And I do know that, like, while the Supreme Court is far gone towards conservatives, I don't actually know what the court lands on in terms of people who genuinely care about the Constitution and fascists. I don't know what the spread is on the Supreme Court of the United States on that one. Yeah, can you pardon a contempt of court? Like, there are going to be a lot of things that are going to be escalated here in relatively short order just because of the dire nature of what is happening. YouTube always defaults me. I know, YouTube always defaults me to top chat, and I fucking moderate the chat. You can't pardon a contempt of court? That's good news. That's something. I can work with that. Well, we got a good place over on Discord for ideas. But folks, if you want to get spicier in your musings, Twitch chat, YouTube chat, Riverboat chat, not good options for that. For obvious reasons, we got to keep our community safe. Don't bring that smoke to our door. I will never do TOS violations. Hell yeah, that's what I like to see. Well, it'll only escalate if the court stays its course and not back down. Well, that's the thing. There are now multiple federal courts in play, and the chances of the Trump administration following any of them are close to zero. So, let's get back to Bernie Sanders' speech here.
I want to mention to my colleagues what President Trump has done just in recent months. Mr. Trump has sued ABC and received a $15 million settlement. He has sued Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, and received a $25 million settlement. He has sued CBS and its parent company Paramount and is right now in negotiations over a settlement. He has sued the Des Moines Register for a poll results that he didn't like, and his FCC is now threatening to investigate PBS and NPR, major news outlets in our country. In other words, we have a president of the United States who is using his incredible power and the power of his agencies to go after media in this country who are saying and doing things.
No, the issue is, Eddie Spencer, the issue is the game of chicken is done. Like, the Trump administration pulled the trigger. Now what the question is, do the courts, like, how do the courts enforce this? It's not a question of does the court back down at this point. There's no mechanism for a court, there's no mechanism for a federal judge that says, if you do this again, you know, you're either getting a agency fine or going to jail. There's not a mechanism for them to de-escalate other than, I guess, doing the agency fine, which again would be fucking insane nonsense given the scope of the constitutional question being put forward. So, like, that's not really an option. So, no, it's not a game of chicken at this point. It is a game of, I guess, where power in the government lies, where each individual person in our government who took an oath to defend the Constitution and our republic, where they actually stand on that oath. That's the question.
Things he does not like. How are we going to have an independent media if journalists are looking over their shoulders, fearful that their reporting will trigger
Russian
a lawsuit
roulette might be more likely, yeah.
from the most powerful executive in the world? Mr. President, in the midst of all of this, I think that now is the time to ask a very, very simple question, something I think that is on the minds of millions of Americans. What do Mr. Musk, Mr. Trump, and their fellow billionaires really want?
Yeah, I guess to, you know, for those of you who are looking at, like, what is the silver lining here? I guess the silver lining, the one potential good thing here is that the nothing ever happens people are about to be proven wrong. Generally, they are currently being proven wrong. Because now the question is kind of being forced, like, will America, will the court system and those who swore to uphold, like, the rule of law in the United States of America, will they actually come through, or will we just kind of sink into this fascist sludge? So that's kind of where we're at. The courts are going to be forced to act, but then the question becomes, who will act to enforce the courts?
No, it's not really taking over Greenland or the Panama Canal, all that stuff. The real question is, what is their endgame? What is their goal? What are they striving for? And in my view, the answer really is not complicated. It is not novel. It is not new. It is, in fact, exactly what ruling classes throughout history have always wanted and have always believed to be their right, and that is more power for themselves, more control for themselves, and more wealth for themselves.
Now, I do want to say, a lot of people have been, by the way, this Bernie speech is fire. It's just hard to focus on with so much going on. But one thing I will say is that a lot of people have been bringing up the presidential immunity decision by the Supreme Court. But understand that a lot of that immunity rests on powers within the Constitution. Like, if that immunity decision did not apply to a president who is actively forcing a constitutional crisis outside of the purview of the Constitution. A president trying to usurp the power of the courts, trying to usurp the power of Congress, that is not, in fact, something that Donald Trump cannot be prosecuted for, is my understanding. That immunity is certainly broad, but it also applies to only actions within his constitutional purview. And at this point, won't they just pretend it doesn't apply? Honestly, Peacheek, I don't know. I don't know how the Supreme Court would rule on this. I don't know what the spread on the Supreme Court is between fascist Republicans and, like, Reaganite Republicans. Because keep in mind, folks, some of the federal judges in this case, in the cases we're talking about Donald Trump, like, going against, are Reagan-appointed judges. They're Republican judges, okay? So the question is, on the Supreme Court, are they Republican judges or are they fascist judges? And I don't know what that answer is when the rubber hits the road. So the thing we all have to kind of reckon with at this moment is that they are banking on this fascist coup attempt succeeding, because if it does not, they know that they don't have another bite at the apple, folks. They know that they're all fucking going to jail and their properties are going to be seized. They know. They know that, like, they have put everything on the line to get this massive, massive theft and pull it on over the American people. That is what they are doing. They are trying to steal trillions of dollars from you, every person you love, every family member you love and hold dear. They are trying to steal trillions of dollars from us. They are thieves. And these people are willing to capitulate the Constitution and 300 million lives built in this country on the premise of democracy and freedom. They're willing to throw all of that in the garbage so that they can do this thievery. And I am not entirely convinced that every Republican in this country is willing to go along with that. I don't think that they have necessarily the fascist movement here necessary. I think that they are too stupid. I think that they've moved too quickly, that they have not consolidated enough power. And so my hope is, and I know that this is maybe a fool's hope, but my hope is that our absolutely peanut brain-sized adversaries have not done a good enough job at this. And that when shit genuinely hits the fan, when the rubber genuinely hits the road, they don't have the gas. So, that's kind of where we're at. It's scary. You know, yesterday we talked about the cliff edge of chaos. Today we've officially jumped into the chaos, into the maelstrom, and I don't know how that shakes out. No one does. I'll read what Amber Brains posted in chat. I know the spread for SCOTUS. 2 are definitely fash. You can pretty much guess who they are. 1 is more fash-leaning. 1 is an originalist and believes in the Constitution. 1 is leaning towards the lib judges on some things and would probably vote along with the libs on this, and then the libs. It's true. By a hair's breadth, SCOTUS might, in fact, side with the Constitution. If that happens, by the way, an amount of weight will be lifted off of my heart that I cannot describe to you guys. If SCOTUS does intervene and actually does side with the Constitution and against Trump, my heart will be lightened immensely. Okay? That's why I said this is the worst outcome. Well, no, the worst outcome is them succeeding. That is the worst outcome, Geckomancer, and we have not seen that quite yet. I do think that enough people in our military and in our armed forces are not so far gone that they will abandon their oath to the Constitution. There's a reason in the military why they take an oath to the Constitution and not the president. And I think a lot of the folks who are in it right now have had that drilled into them in excess. Until Trump ignores the Supreme Court. Well, yes, but at that point, if Trump ignores the Supreme Court, then we're in, like, Civil War territory, and they don't win that shit. They don't win that. I know military folks that are that far gone. That's true. There are military folks that are that far gone. I do not think they represent the majority of the armed forces. I do not think the majority of the armed forces, if asked to choose between, for example, the Supreme Court and the President of the United States, I don't think they choose the president who's trying to be a dictator. Then again, I could be wrong and we're all just fucked. So there you go. For folks who want to poo-poo on that idea, you could be right. We could all be fucked. But this is my hope that I'm holding on to. No. And that's the thing. Sophie Bliss, if I'm wrong and the military is willing to side with the dictator, we are absolutely fucked. Absolutely, completely, and utterly. At least for, the next few generations. But I'm gonna hold on to maybe our armed forces are not that far gone. And I do not think we are that far gone. I'm just saying that about extremism in the military. Yeah, of course. There's extremism everywhere. That's kind of beside the question, though. Seeing someone else express appropriate alarm has made me feel less crazy, less alone. Yeah, no, RPG Lilac, this is like fucking, we're at fucking like the top level alarm. I cannot emphasize enough that if this escalates, the potential for things going sideways is incredibly scary. I do think that, I do think, though, and I'm going to reiterate this, that in aggregate, the U.S. military is not, in fact, ready to side with the dictator. I do not think that the U.S. military leadership is ready to put their lives on the line for Pete fucking Hegseth. Are you kidding me? Anyone, by the way, anyone who knows anything about the military knows that Pete Hegseth being defense secretary is a fucking joke. Dude is laughable. Okay? There is absolutely no fucking way the US military puts their entire lives on the line for that man. But good to know, Sunny Days. I do appreciate your words. They do make me feel a little bit better. That being said, let's get back to this.
And in their pursuit of more power, more control, and more wealth, they are determined to not allow democracy and the rule of law to get in their way. For Mr. Musk and his fellow oligarchs, the needs, the concerns, the pain, the ideas, the dreams of ordinary people are simply an impediment to what they, the oligarchs, are entitled to. And that is really what they believe. They are entitled to all of the wealth and the power they have, and they are determined to stop anyone who gets in their way. Mr. President, this process, this phenomenon that is going on right now is not the first time that we have seen this in our country's history. As I think many Americans understand, in pre-revolutionary America, before the 1770s, before the creation of the United States and the writing of our Constitution, the ruling class of that time governed through a doctrine called the divine right of kings. The belief that the King of England was an agent of God, that God appointed him, and that he was not to be questioned by mere mortal human beings.
Understand how bad things have to get for Bernie Sanders to get up on stage and talk in Congress to plainly spell out to every single one of us that Donald Trump is attempting to reinstate the divine right of kings in America in 2025. I do hope that some of that revolutionary fervor and spirit, the kind that caused us to dump tea into Boston Harbor, the kind that caused us to cross the Delaware, I do hope that that same distaste for tyrants and kings still lingers in the breast of every American. I know it still lingers in mine. I do hope you'll join me in never bowing for a tyrant, chat.
He was appointed by God. In modern times, we no longer have the divine right of kings. What we now have is an ideology being pushed by the oligarchs, which says that as a very, very wealthy group...
Yeah, let me put it this way, Eddie. I don't give a shit what some rabid cult wants. You know? They can drink Kool-Aid for all I care. But when they want to put a king in charge of me and mine, no, sir. No. I say no.
Group of people, often self-made, often the masters of revolutionary new technology, and as high IQ individuals, it is their absolute right to rule. In other words, the oligarchs of today are our modern-day kings. And Mr. President, it is not just power that they want. Despite the incredible wealth that they currently have, they want more and more and more. Their greed has no end. Today, Mr. Musk is worth $402 billion. Mr. Zuckerberg is worth $252 billion, and Mr. Bezos is worth $249 billion. With combined wealth of $903 billion, these three people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million Americans. And not surprisingly, since Trump was elected, their wealth has soared. Musk has become $138 billion richer, Zuckerberg has become $49 billion richer, and Bezos has become $28 billion richer since Election Day in November. Meanwhile, Mr. President, while the very rich become much richer, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured in terms of health care. 25% of our seniors in this country are trying to survive on $15,000 a year or less. 800,000 Americans are homeless, and we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And real inflation-adjusted wages for the average American worker has not gone up in 50 years. Does anyone really think that the oligarchs give a damn about ordinary Americans?
Fuck no.
Trust me, they don't. Musk's decision to dismember USAID means that tens of thousands of the poorest people in this world will either go hungry or die of preventable diseases. Tens of thousands of people. But it's not just USAID and what's happening abroad. Here in the United States, mark my words, if we do not stop them, they will soon be going after the health care, nutrition, housing, and educational programs that protect the most vulnerable people in our country, all so that they can raise the money they need to provide huge tax breaks for themselves and for other billionaires. As modern-day kings who believe they have the absolute right to rule, they will sacrifice without hesitation the well-being of working people in order to protect their power and their privileges. Further, they will use the enormous media operations they own to deflect attention away from the impact of their policies while they entertain us to death. Mr. Musk owns Twitter. Mr. Zuckerberg owns Meta, which includes Facebook and Instagram. And Mr. Bezos owns the Washington Post and Twitch. Further, they and their fellow oligarchs will continue within our corrupt campaign finance system to spend huge amounts of money to buy politicians in both major political parties. Bottom line, the oligarchs, with their unlimited amounts of money, are waging a war on the working class of our country, and it is a war that they are intent on winning. Now, I'm not going to kid anybody. The problems that our country faces right now are enormously serious, and they are not easy to solve. Our economy is rigged. The rich get richer, poor get poorer, and the middle class struggles. Our campaign finance system is totally corrupt. Billionaires can now pour as much money as they want into both political parties. and climate change is ravaging our country and the world with unprecedented levels of extreme weather disturbances, among many other crises our country faces. But, Mr. President, in the midst of all of these crises, this is what I do know, and this is what I do believe. And that is that the worst fear of the ruling class of our country is that the American people, whether they are black or white or Latino, whether they are urban or rural, whether they are young or old, gay or straight, whatever. The fear of the ruling class is that the American people come together to demand a government that represents all of us, not just the people on top. The oligarch's nightmare is that we will not allow ourselves to be divided up by race, religion, sexual orientation, or country of origin, and will come together and have the courage to take them on. Will this struggle be easy? No, it will not. And one of the reasons that it will not be easy is that the ruling class of this country will constantly remind us that they have the power. They control the government. They own the media. But our job right now in these difficult times is to go back and remember the great struggles and sacrifices that millions of Americans have waged over the centuries in difficult times to create a more democratic, just, and humane society. Think about all of the sacrifices and the struggles that Americans went through to create a more democratic, just, and humane society. And think about trying to put yourself to where they were in those times of crisis. Think about what was being said at those times. Think about the 1770s, overthrowing the King of England, the most powerful person on earth, the British Empire, to create a new nation and have self-rule here in the colonies? Impossible. So many people thought it could not be done. Establishing universal suffrage, the right of all people, whether they were wealthy or not, to vote. Imagine that, what a radical idea, extending the right to vote to poor people. Impossible, couldn't be done, but it was done. Ending slavery and segregation, taking on all of the power of the slaveholders. Impossible, but it was done. Granting workers the right to form unions and ending child labor, taking on the power of big business. Impossible, but it was done. Giving women control over their own bodies, taking on sexism, taking on the powers that be. Couldn't be done, impossible, but it was done. Passing legislation to establish Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, a minimum wage, clean air and water standards. Impossible, it couldn't be done, but it was done. In other words, Mr. President, I think back to what Nelson Mandela told us. And he said, everything is impossible until it is done. So in these difficult days, when we find ourselves arrayed against the wealthiest people in the world, the most powerful people in the world, people who want to expand the power of the oligarchy, people who want to move us toward authoritarianism, I know that people get discouraged, that we can't take them on, that we cannot create a government that works for all and not just the few. that we cannot do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people as a human right, that we cannot raise the minimum wage to a living wage so that tens of millions of people do not earn starvation wages, that we cannot make sure that all of our kids get the quality education that they deserve, that we can't expand Social Security to lower the poverty rate among seniors. Now, I know that in this moment people say, well, that's an impossible dream, can't be done. But I think if you look back on American history, you will find that in very difficult and dark days, when people came together, they did the impossible. So this ain't going to be easy. We're taking on enormously powerful people who really do not believe in democracy or the rule of law. But if we stand together, we're going to win this fight. And not only will we save American democracy, we're going to create the kind of nation that I think most of us know we should become. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Would you have freedom from wage slavery and join in the grand industrial band? Would you from misery and hunger be free and come do your share like a man?
There is power in a band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union grand.
Would you have sharing the gold in the sky and live in a shack away in the back? Would you have wings up in heaven to fly and starve here with rags on your back?
There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union land.
If you've had enough of the blood of the lamb, then join in the grand industrial band. If for a change you would have eggs and ham, come do your share like a man.
There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union band.
Well, if you like sluggers to beat off your head, then don't organize or unions despise. If you are nothing before you are dead, shake hands with your boss and look wise.
There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union band.
Oh, come, oh, ye workers from every land, join in the grand industrial band. Then we our share of this earth shall demand. Come do your part like a man.
There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union band.
Would you take contently what's put in your hand, less than you've earned with one leg to stand? Would you believe what they tell you to be, or with brothers go out and see?
There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union band. There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's the power that must rule in every land, one industrial union band, one industrial union band, one industrial union band.
So, yeah. We are in some dire times. And the nature of the game we are all playing together in society has changed, or seems to be changing rapidly. And in that spirit, we must look to ourselves and our own. You know, are we safe? Are our loved ones safe? Is our family safe? Are our neighbors safe? Are our communities safe? You know, that's kind of how it needs to go. We need to check in at each one of those levels and do what we can to make sure, you know, the hatches are battened down. Because what's going to happen, and we're just going to talk about that, right? We don't know what exactly is about to unfold in America. It's likely going to be weird and wild. But what we do know is that we are going to have basic material needs. So let's figure those out. We do know we're still going to need to find some joy. Let's figure that out. And we also know that we're going to need people power. So let's keep organizing. Let's keep going to those DSA meetings. Let's keep going to those local Dem meetings. Let's keep going to those protests. Let's keep emailing and calling our elected representatives. This is the nature of the game changing doesn't mean that we need to accept that change. We continue doing the work. Okay? We feel the feelings that we need to feel today and tomorrow, maybe. But ultimately, we get through those feelings and we get back to work because our power comes from working together and making our own rules. Society is just rules we've all collectively agreed to. If enough of us agree to a different set of rules, it doesn't matter what 30% of the country believes if 70% of the country says, that's silly. 30% of this country may support a Trump dictatorship, and I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, 30% may well believe that. They may well support that. Then let's laugh in their fucking faces together. That's what you gotta do. Ultimately, whatever and however this whole situation shakes out, we need to be working together. So continue working to the end of organizing together and making union together. Because there's power in that. And then regardless of what happens, we can always fall back on that power. Because alone, we can be scared, we can be intimidated, we can feel like we're backed into corners. But when we work together in a union, we cannot be cornered. So now is the time to reach out to groups like Indivisible. Indivisible has a great set of tool sets that allow you to organize your own local protests or find local protests that you can go to. Make sure you come up, if you are, someone who can't go to a protest, then make sure you are calling your elected officials. There's a website called 5calls.org, number 5, and then calls.org. That will help you contact your elected representatives. When a system starts to fall apart, chat, it is more important than ever that you get involved. Because your involvement is kind of like a glue that holds the entire thing together. The more isolated a social system is, the more vulnerable it is to destruction, to manipulation. And we need to make sure we are doing everything possible. If at the very least, if the question of our democracy is settled, if that is true, and I'm not sure that it is, but if that is true, then, it becomes a method for us to frustrate, thwart, and slow down, at the very least, some of the most powerful people on the planet. And at every juncture, that should be one of our goals. These people wanted power and none of the responsibility, and that's just not how it works. So we need to work together, folks. Can I ask on the Discord for local protest groups? I don't have proper transportation, but I want to know who is around me, you know? You absolutely can. There's a protest area that you can go to and ask questions. Also, if you're looking for local protests, again, indivisible.org has a tool that will help you find local protests. It's true, Dragonfly. That's also a very good point. If American democracy is true, well and truly dead and buried, then we're going to have to figure out a new one. A new American democracy. And we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and get to work building it, despite the aggrieved billionaire class, I'm sure, disagreeing with that concept. But I'm sure in due time we'll be capable of dealing with individuals like that. After all, there are hundreds of millions of us and only a few dozen of them. And I'm sure we'll sort it out. I'm pessimistic. I feel like the bad guys have won. Yep. But if you acknowledge that pessimism, right? And you say, okay, the bad guys have won. You still need to figure out what to do next. You still got to wake up tomorrow. You still got to figure out what you're going to do. And I, for one, even if the bad guys have won today, don't intend for them to win tomorrow and every subsequent day hereafter. After all, don't you guys know the story of William Tell? Even the highest head may fall to the hand that wields the bow. So, don't assume that just because bad people win one day means that they will win every day thereafter. You're not familiar with the story of William Tell? Well, I need to end stream and just, like, go watch a movie or something. Chill out a little bit, maybe take a bath. So let me refresh you on the tale of William Tell. Kind of my theme going into this. And yes, they are in fact pissing off the military. There are a lot of pieces of evidence here that, you know, military folks are not, in fact, a huge fan of being fucked with the way that Donald Trump and his administration seems so absolutely keen and peachy on fucking with them. Whether it's VA benefits or who they can get to design the safest and most reliable vehicles for them to go around in. Because guess what, guys? Elon Musk may be one of the biggest national defense contractors around, but dude's most recent car that he's trying to sell as a military-grade vehicle, it bursts into flames 17 times more often than the Ford Pinto. Don't think that's going to make you a lot of friends in the military with the materials you manufacture for, you know, soldiers to put their lives reliant on. So, I guess at this point, I have informed you. It's time to do what we can. Batten down the hatches. The storm's a-brewing. And we'll keep doing what we're doing. We'll keep organizing. We will keep fighting. We will keep paying attention to what they are doing. And I mean, the nothing ever happens crowd is going to be disappointed because something seems like it's going to happen. I don't know what. It's scary. But we'll all work together and come out of this okay, folks. As okay as we can. So don't you all go doing anything silly. We got work to do. And I may be back later. Who knows?